Hi, it's Lucy, and today I'm here to do a video on my 2019 reading stats and go over my 2019 reading goals. So this is going to be like the final video on how I did on all of my goals, and I'll tell you like some statistics about all the books that I've read this month. Not this month, this year. Year's a lot longer than a month. Please ignore my cat who is yelling at me. He's always yelling at me. Anytime I'm not paying attention to him, he's like, why aren't you paying attention to me? Probably why I got him. I thought he was similar to me, and honestly, I am the same way. Anytime someone stops paying attention to me, I'm like, what happened? Why aren't you paying attention to me? First, 2019 reading goals, and I'll scoot over and I'm gonna do some graphs and stuff. I'll talk about how I do my reading stats when we get there, but first, my goals. So first, my biggest goal, the Goodreads goal, my goal was to read 100 books in 2019, and I did it. Go me. I had a goal to reread 6 books. I reread 4 books, so not quite. If you've already seen my 2020 reading goals, you'll know that I didn't repeat that goal. That is just not something that's as important to me anymore, and by the end of the year, it kind of fell off. I had a goal to read 12 books by Black authors, and I ended up reading 24, so did get on that one. And then I also had a goal to read 12 books by LGBTQIA+ authors or with LGBTQIA+ main characters, and I ended up reading 27. So again, I did it. I wanted to read all the books on my 2019 TBR. If you want to see that video, it's obviously still up, even though it's a year old. I ended up reading 4 out of 12 of those books, so did not do great on that. If you want to see my 2020 TBR, which I will hopefully do better on, that video will be linked down below. I wanted to do 1 readathon a month, which just meant I wanted to complete 12 readathons, and I did it. Or I mean, I participated in 12 readathons. Most of the readathons I think I failed actually, but I did it. Next year I will not be adding that as a goal because I felt like there was a lot of pressure on myself to partake in readathons, and I really felt burned out towards the end of the year. So yeah, I don't think that was right for me. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with readathons because I love them. I love the ideas of them and stuff, but I noticed in the past year that I was failing most of the ones that I participated in, and I do try to do them in a low stakes way. I have no problem on doubling up on challenges most of the time. Yeah, so I don't know how I can fix that, or if I should just look at readathons and not participate. I would hate to do that though because I do love readathons. I had a 3-book limit on NetGalley books, which means that I could only have 3 NetGalley books out at a time. I did not complete that, but the purpose of that goal was to limit my NetGalley like perusing, not borrowing, I guess, because I guess I can keep them, but they're ebooks that are like unpublished. Anyway, just like acquiring more NetGalley books, like a lot of them at once, because before I used to go on NetGalley, request like 10 books, and then be like, no, I'm not gonna get those. And then I would get like 7 of them, and then I would read like 1 of them, and then I'd go back in NetGalley, repeat the process, and then I'd end up with like 10 NetGalley books that were all being published in like the next 2 weeks, and obviously I wasn't gonna read all of them. So the purpose of this goal was really, I guess, to keep my NetGalley ratio down, which I did. I'm currently at 85%, I think, on NetGalley. It might have just gone up because I did request a couple books, but it's not as big of a binge as it used to be. And I do talk about NetGalley in my 2020 goals video if you're interested. And also, to go along with this goal, kind of book acquiring goal, I had a goal to complete my book buying, not complete, but stick to my book buying budget, where in the most basic terms, I could only buy a book if I had already read 3 books off of my shelf. This went for ebooks and physical books, but like separately. So 3 ebooks is 1 new ebook that I could buy, and 3 physical books is 1 new physical book that I could buy. Ebooks I did great on. I can't find my bullet journal right now. I think it's in a bag. Oh, I think it's in this bag actually. Hold on. Okay, I have my bullet journal now. So yeah, by the end of the year, I ended up with -6 physical credits and +7 ebook credits. So what that means basically is that I could buy 2 ebooks and have 1 credit left over, and I just bought 2 physical books that I shouldn't have, basically. That is way better than I ended up last year. Last year, I think I was at like -40 in both of them. Last year was also special circumstances because I did travel out of the country and buy books in other countries and stuff. But yeah, way better now. And so I didn't complete it, but it has helped me control my book buying. So it's still a success in my book. And then I also had 3 booktube goals that didn't have to do with my reading, but like my participation in this community. And the first goal was that I wanted to take part in a live show and be part of a book club. I was part of a live show. I did a live show on this channel. It's in the 12 Days of Lucie Reads playlist if you're interested. It's just me talking about the channel survey that I did and just my response to your response. That makes sense, and answer a couple of Q&A questions. I did not take part in a book club. I really just didn't make it a priority. Every month, it's so hard for me to go off of the TBR that I've already made in my head to look at other people's things and be like, oh, they're gonna read this book, I should also read it with them. So I didn't do that. I wanted to host a readathon in 2019. I did not do that. I didn't make up a readathon, and I wasn't a host in anyone else's readathon. And once again, I didn't really try. I wasn't coming up with readathon ideas for myself, and I didn't really know anyone who was hosting readathons that I could feel comfortable being like, hey, do you need a co-host? So yeah, but if you're watching this video and you're hosting a readathon and need a co-host, this is again a goal for 2020. So ask me. I would like to co-host your readathon. And then my last goal was to do 4 to 6 videos a month. I actually found this cool website that lets you like visually see how many videos you did in a calendar, or like all your videos in a calendar. I'll link it down below if I can remember it. But I did end up completing this goal. I usually did 4 to 6 videos a month. I thought for some reason that I ended up doing more videos a month, but looking at that calendar, it was actually less than I thought. So like I thought I was closer to 6 videos a month, but I was definitely closer to 4 videos a month. So that's an interesting thing. Now we are ready for my 2019 reading spreadsheet. I use the spreadsheet from Brock from Let's Read. I don't think he really uses his channel anymore, but the spreadsheet is still up on his channel, so I'll leave it linked down below. I think the last one that he put up, and I've modified it since then for more stats that I want to see. It is very, very detailed. So if you're not into that, then I know that there are a bunch of other spreadsheets that aren't quite as detailed, but are still like cool, and they're probably aesthetically nicer. So check those out if you're interested. I love spreadsheets. I love data. This is one of my favorite videos to do every year because I love statistics. Here's everything that I read in 2019 and facts about them. So like I said, I read 100 books in 2019. Should I be on the left or right side? I'll be on the left side because it's my good side. The genres that I read in 2019, I read 19 fantasy books, 36 contemporary books, 4 mystery books, 1 literary fiction, 5 nonfiction, 5 memoirs, 3 gothic fiction, 4 historical fiction, 1 steampunk, 1 poetry book, 7 self-help books, and 3 thrillers. I feel like sometimes that the genres don't quite add up, not quite add up, but don't quite make as much sense, because some of them I split, like nonfiction and memoir, I split. Some of them I'm not sure how to categorize and things like that, so please forgive me on that. And also the great thing about reading 100 books is that all of the numbers work out perfectly. Like there's no point this percent or anything, because it's all out of 100. Let's talk about pages. Contemporary had the most books that I read by a lot, so obviously it had the most pages. I read 12,536 pages of contemporary. The next most pages was obviously fantasy, because I read 19 fantasy. It's the next most amount of books. I want to see if there's any like outliers or anything. What I'm really looking for is like genres where I read a certain amount of books, but it ended up being like less pages than a genre I read less books in. So trying to scan for that. I don't think there are any really. In total, I read 33,185 pages. 2 of the books that I read were graphic novels. 11 were hardcovers. That sounds wrong. 3 were trade paperbacks. 17 were uncorrected proofs, so ARCs. 8 were ebooks, and 59 were audiobooks. If you had looked at my spreadsheet, like the first year I did this, audiobooks was probably like 1 or 2 books. And also with the audiobooks, in total, I ended up listening to 566 hours of audio, which in days would be 23.58 days rounded. I do listen to audiobooks at a faster speed, so technically I did not spend exactly this amount of time listening to audiobooks, but still the amount of audiobook I've consumed is still that much, which is wild. And if we combine all of the formats of books that I read, 24 of them were physical and 76 of them were digital, because most of the ARCs that I read are digital. All audiobooks are digital. That is most of the books that I read. 17 of the books that I read were previously on my TBR, so I owned them before this year. 6 of them were books that I bought and read this year. Let's talk about page length next. Most of the books that I read had between 300 and 399 pages. 43 of them had that. The next highest was 200 to 299 pages, and 23 of them had that. And then 19 books had 400 to 499 pages. And the longest book I read was somewhere between 600 to 699 pages. That book was Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor, which was 613 pages. Books per month. I read the most books in January, where I read 13 books. I read the least books in June, where I read 5 books. The second most was in September, my birthday month. I have no idea why. So that amounts to the most pages I read also being in January. I read 4,245 pages. I actually read the second most pages in March, and I read 3,781 pages. I can tell you what put me over the edge was the 5th season. So on average, I ended up reading 2,765 pages a month, and I ended up on average reading 91 pages a day, and it took me about 4 days to finish each book, if we do it on average. Obviously, some books took me longer than others. I started 7 series in 2019. I completed 9 series, allegedly, but I did not talk about 9 series in my completed series of 2019 video, so I don't know where that number comes from. Oh, some of my rereads were part of series, and I marked those as me having finished the series because I have already finished the series. I was just rereading certain books. So I think that's where that comes from. And then I just continued on in 17 series. 33 of the books that I read were part of a series, and 66 were standalones. This does not make 100%. So I don't know where that missing book went. Sorry, I guess I should check the spreadsheet over. 93 of the books that I read were novels. 1 was a novella, 1 was an anthology, 5 were graphic trades. And now let's go to star ratings for books. In 2019, I gave 3 books 5 stars. 1 of those was a reread. I gave 3 books 4.5 stars, and then by far the most books got 4 stars, and I gave 47 books 4 stars. Next highest is 3.5 stars, and I gave 37 books 3.5 stars. I gave 5 books 3 stars, 3 books 2.5 stars, and then 2 books 2 stars. No book got below 2 stars. So my average star rating for the year is 3.73, which is good, but also I feel like it doesn't really reflect my reading. Like I said, I only read 3 5-star books out of 100, which is so disappointing to me. I would have rather had more 2-star books if it meant I had more 5-star books. Let's talk about more content within the books. The age groups of the books that I read, 45 of them were adult, 51 of them were YA, and 4 of them were middle grade. Honestly, that surprised me. Last year, I think it was also just pretty close to even. So every year it just is closer and closer to being evenly adult and YA. That, I don't know how I feel about that. It's very interesting to me though. Protagonist gender, we have 10 books I read had male protagonists, 59 had female protagonists, 19 had ensemble protagonists, which means that it was multiple perspective and the perspectives were men and women or other genders. They weren't all one gender. Because if they were all one gender, I mark it under the gender that they are. 2 of the books I read had non-binary protagonists, and 1 of the books I read had a trans man protagonist. And 9 of the books that I read had no protagonist, so those were nonfiction. If it was a memoir, I considered the author to be the protagonist. To go with that, the author genders were 23 of the books I read were written by male authors, 73 were written by female authors, and 1 was an unknown author. In regards to diversity, and then we'll do acquisitions, 29 of the books that I read had some kind of racial diversity. 8 of the books had like LGBTQIA plus diversity. 3 books featured main characters with mental illnesses. 1 book featured a main character with a disability. 19 had some kind of combo of the aforementioned. 4 of the books that I read had main characters that did not have any kind of diversity, but the author was, so the author might have been like black, but their main character wasn't. 43 of the books that I read featured an own voices protagonist, and 57 did not. I forgot to mention this in the goals portion, but that was a goal of mine to have 50-50 own voices and not own voices. So I did not accomplish that goal, but I was pretty close, I think. I definitely still think I'm in a good place, and next year hopefully will be even more. In regards to author race, we have, like I mentioned, 24 black authors. 61 of the authors that I read were white, 10 were East Asian, 2 were Latinx, and 2 authors were like mixed race. On to acquisition. So this is all the books that I bought. I bought 15 books in total in 2019. These statistics do not include any ARCs that I read or any book that I received for free. This is only books that I paid money for. 5 of them were fantasy, which I thought was interesting. 4 of them were memoirs, which I thought was less interesting and made more sense to me. I bought the most books in September, which I think I mentioned before is the month that I was born. It's my birthday month, so I definitely use that as an excuse in September to buy more books. In total, I ended up spending $190.58 on books. So less than $200 a year on books does not seem bad to me at all, considering this is my primary hobby. I think that's it for all the statistics that I want to share with you guys. I don't think anything else is all that interesting. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. In the comments down below, tell me some of your statistics. What was your most read genre in 2019? If you can remember, or just anything that you can think of off the top of your head, I would love to know. Like I said, I love statistics. Again, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I post a video. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.